Today on CCHF Talk.
We are carrying the trauma and the stories and the diagnosis and sometimes the projections and misplaced anger of the people that we are serving. You won't always feel like worshiping God by being kind to your coworker or working enthusiastically or using what little voice you have left to advocate for someone. But this is where obedience kicks in. Sometimes you will have to choose to worship anyway.
CCHF Talk is produced by Christian Community Health Fellowship, where healthcare providers, executives, and students come together to educate, encourage, and engage. Join us as we explore topics related to healthcare to marginalized communities. Those talks, those conversations. CCHF Talk.
We're going to jump right in. Serving the workforce is worship. All right, so before I fully introduce myself, I would love to hear what your roles are. So if you can just shout out your role, you don't all have to, but it just helps to give me a sense of where in your workplace you are worshiping. So shout out some of your roles if you wouldn't mind. Nurse, development director, cool. Community health worker, okay. Family doctor, amazing. Front desk, okay. Therapist, office manager, anyone else? Okay. So you are definitely all in roles where you are worshiping and where worship is essential. I think that's true probably for all of us. Some of you may be in secular clinics, so we'll talk a little bit about how to carve some time in. But before I fully introduce myself, I want to tell you one of the coolest things about me, which is that I work at Jericho Road Community Health Center. We are in Buffalo, New York, and this is a picture of our staff. So we have a very diverse staff. That is one of the coolest things about us. And this is our mission statement here at the bottom. So we care for our communities and advocate for systemic health equity in order to demonstrate the unconditional love of Jesus. So this is our charge. When I talk about worship, this is one of the ways that we feel that we worship. So thanks for choosing this session. This is me when I first started at Jericho Road as a little baby. I was a volunteer first to start. Then I was an intern. I was an entry-level employee. I was a manager. I was a director. Now I sit on the executive team. So it has been a journey, but it's been a real blessing to be able to see multiple different vantage points in the organization. Right now, my home team is HR. I have training, volunteer management, organizational strategy. We talk about growth and strategic planning. And I have had over 11 years in HR, but in total, I've been at Jericho Road for over 14. My master's is in strategic leadership. That's kind of my jam, is the strategy piece. And then my people are my husband, my 2 daughters, and our 2 rescue dogs, Sadie and Eggroll. You read that right. The dog's name is Eggroll. So first, let's talk about the definition of worship. Worship is a response, a lifestyle. It is obedience, a collective act, an expression of gratitude. Worship is the worthiness of God. It is God deserving recognition. In Hebrew, the word worship means to bow. In Greek, it means to show reverence. Is there anything anyone would add to this list? Anything you think of when you think of worship or the definition of worship? So how is work an act of worship? If worship is a response, if it's a lifestyle, if it's obedience, that actually sounds exactly like what we're doing every day that you show up. We are responding to God's worthiness and recognizing Him with our lifestyle of serving the poor in healthcare, of being obedient to a calling, of joining together to serve in our communities. We are bowing. So now that we've confirmed that it's a bow, let's talk about how we do that. Romans 12:1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Sacrifice is an act of worship. We sacrifice in this work, right? Sleep, sanity, money, rest. Sometimes we refer to our wages at Jericho Road as sacrificial salaries. Is anyone else making one of those? Okay. We are urged in Romans to sacrifice as an act of worship. 3:23. Whatever you do, work heartily, as if for the Lord and not for men. We work for the Lord, and He has been clear that we are called to work heartily. When I looked up heartily to make sure I really understood this one, it means to do something with sincerity, enthusiasm, and full commitment, as if from the soul. God bless you. If we are working as worship, this is the pathway. Work heartily. What does that look like? Worship is treating those working alongside you with love, integrity, and sincerity, even when they're rough. Worship is seeing work as an offering to God. Every task, no matter how mundane, and doing it with enthusiasm, even when you're tired. Worship is allowing God to break your heart for what breaks His with full commitment. And that's going to hurt. So we'll talk about the first one, worship and serving the workforce. If Jesus were on your team, how would you treat Him? Your colleagues are children of God. Yes, even that one. Treating God's children while at work is an act of worship. Lord, I see you in this person. And I will serve them like I would serve you. I will serve them the way that you would serve them. Serving one another at work is ministry. We need to have curiosity, empathy, give them the benefit of the doubt, even that one. Sometimes you'll have a rough colleague. Maybe they don't work the way that you think they should. Maybe your personalities don't mesh. You can let this grind your gears, or you can see this as an opportunity to see Jesus in that person and show them Jesus in you. Move with curiosity and say things like, tell me more about that. Treat them with empathy. How can I support you? Assume the best. Maybe they didn't mean to talk to me that way. If we are hiring from the communities we serve in, the folks that we work with are the folks that we work for. They may have transportation barriers that make them late to work, childcare issues that make them call in, chronic health conditions and unsafe living conditions that can be challenging, distracting, and heavy to constantly carry. That whole leave your home life at home thing, it's a myth. We are all walking into work every single day, carrying the night before, carrying the morning of, carrying everything in between. So we're all going to need just a little bit more grace. Before we discipline the chronic tardiness, let's ask if there's something that leads to it. Before we are offended by the roughness in communication, let's make sure this person knows they don't need to defend themselves to you because you aren't attacking them in a world that feels like it is attacking them probably 90% of the time. The gentleness with which we or our providers speak to our patients, we have to have at least that much, if not more, for one another. If I wouldn't want my team to roll their eyes at the 30th patient at the front office window, I cannot roll my eyes at the 30th team member that needs something from me as an administrative person. What we pour into them is what they will pour into our patients. What are you pouring into your teams? Mother Teresa said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. If you want to change your community, you can start with loving your team. 1 Peter 4:10, God has given each of you a gift. From his great variety of spiritual gifts, use them well to serve one another. We are responsible for honoring God by sharing the gifts he has given us. Each of you has a spiritual gift, and he has assigned you to use it at your organization. What is yours? I know we're all humble, but the line between humility and not honoring God by sharing your gifts is a fine one. Honor him and share yourself. Kayla, do you think Jesus would take their laptop? Some of you are here, maybe because you're in HR. Some of you said you were in leadership. So as you know, from time to time, we need to help someone separate from the organization. One day, after a particularly difficult termination conversation in which I did all the things, right? Explained the benefits, final paycheck, asked for their laptop and badge. And after they left, our CEO said to me, Kayla, do you think Jesus would take their laptop? Like, do you think in this very hard moment for them, Jesus would be worried about taking their laptop and stripping their things from them? And I'll be honest, I had never thought about it. This is an HR process. This is what we do. This is mitigating the risk. Now, someone separating is one of the riskier points of an employee's experience. You're mitigating that risk by taking their badge and their laptop. However, how you do this, how the conversation goes, your posture, your sensitivity can be an opportunity to show them Jesus. I am not telling you whether or not you should take their laptop, but I am telling you that you should think about how you serve someone in arguably one of the hardest moments of their time with you. That moment is not about you. Your frustration, how you may feel about them, or anything that they've done, that moment is really, really, really about them. The way that we serve them in that moment is an opportunity to show grace and love in recognition of the grace and love that Jesus has shown to us. It's worship. Speaking of terminations, an act of worship, prayer. We had an employee that really struggled to be on time, to get things done on time. She could be rough with patients. She could be rough with her team. We had, as we really always do, offered her every possible option to improve. We invested in her. We coached her. We had patience. We had grace. We had a million conversations. With no options left, some pretty egregious things that were challenging, we released her. She promptly sent an email to our CEO saying that she was wrongfully terminated and she wanted to talk to someone. So I called her. 2 hours later, she prayed for me, and I prayed over the next chapter for her. I reminded her that this was just one closed door that she can learn and she can grow from. We sat on the phone for 2 hours, and it changed the conversation. Empathy. You don't have to say, you got yourself here. You can say, I appreciate where you're coming from, and I'd ask that you understand X, Y, and Z. In that 2-hour conversation with her, I was vulnerable about challenging work experiences I had had and how I learned from them. I answered her questions. I reminded her of the examples that we had talked to her about. I listened to her perspective. And this is not to say that I did anything cool. This is to say that Jesus did something cool through me, and it changed the situation. We prayed together, despite where we had started. In 2 hours, we went from wrongful termination to I wish you well. Love them like Jesus. You are not working for your organization. You are working for Jesus. Show up for one another. Well, how can you support someone else, even if it's not in your job description? When Jesus asks you to do something, you don't say, that's not in my job description. If he is asking you to serve well at your organization, he may be asking you to do things outside of what's written. Now, I'm not talking about running yourself into the ground and not caring for yourself. We all know that this is a risk point for us. This is not like the burn yourself out talk. I am talking about the how behind doing your job with sincerity, enthusiasm, full commitment. Those qualifications may not be listed, but make no mistake, God has qualified you. Loving your team like Jesus would love them, going above and beyond for them, encouraging, empowering, lifting them higher. It's ministry, the second part. Worship, seeing work as an offering to God. What does it mean to do even the most mundane tasks with enthusiasm? Just because you do tasks that no one sees does not mean no one sees you. Your organization serves communities that otherwise feel forgotten. You hire from your community. We need to make sure that our internal community does not feel forgotten. Whether you are cleaning or you are the front desk person or you are the CEO, your work matters. Whether it is seen or unseen, the thing you are doing would not get done if not for you. The hallway wouldn't sparkle, and the atmosphere that our patients are served in matters. That patient wouldn't get checked in by someone that is smiling at them, and maybe you are the first person to smile at them today. People feeling like someone is happy to see them matters. That staff member wouldn't have had a safe space to talk about what's going on in their life if you didn't ask them how they were and genuinely waited for the answer, or noticed that they weren't good when they said that they were and asked follow-up questions. That matters. Show up wholeheartedly and enthusiastically. Be happy to see people, and they will not soon forget that. We can't control every narrative that is told about us when our team members go home, but to the extent that we can, what story do you want them to tell about how they were treated at work that day? Psalm 102. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him singing with joy. We are called to worship with gladness, joy, song apparently. The way we worship matters, and if we are called to sacrifice and work heartily as worship, we are called to do it with gladness. Sing me home. She doesn't know I'm about to tell this story. Coming from an FQHC, so it's rough out here right now. We are worried about funding cuts and layoffs and Medicaid and grant clawbacks. It's a very special time. A few weeks ago, I had spent all day in our conference room, meetings, projects, worry. Needless to say, by the time I was headed out for the day, I was less than enthusiastic. I was not joyful. But as I slumped out of the conference room to head home, thinking I was the only person left in the building, I walked down the hall to hear one of our people singing at her desk. It was late. I knew she had a lot on her plate. She was there when I came in, and I was leaving, and she was still there, singing. And let me tell you that I thought about her sitting at that desk, working along on her goodness knows what hour that day, singing for weeks. I still think about it because she was joyful and enthusiastic, and no one was left in the building. No one was actively thanking her or seeing her. There was no one to sing for, except Jesus. She sang like she knew he was listening because he was. Worship at work is singing at your desk when you're sitting there alone, because you know you aren't really sitting there alone. And the impact that had on me, well, I'm here at a conference weeks later telling you about it, so I'd say it stuck with me. Since then, even when the days are difficult and long and I slump out of the conference room, I sing on the way home because of her and just for him. Worship is allowing God to break your heart. Following Jesus into the neighborhoods we work in is going to break our hearts. We don't have to do this work, though. We get to. We are entrusted with the people that we serve, and I may never know what I did to deserve the opportunity to love them, but I'm going to honor and thank God by loving them well. We have a responsibility to advocate for the people we serve. We are loud speakers for the people no one listens to. Worship is the intimate act of honoring God. Honoring God means loving his people, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. Our goal is not to succeed by the world's standards, but to use what we've got for the good of others and the glory of God. And it's going to hurt. But to worship God because he is worthy is to remind each other of our own worthiness in him. Our neighbors are worthy of love and belonging. They are worthy of your advocacy for them. They are worthy of you getting out of your comfort zone and educating people about your unhoused or marginalized or refugee or asylum-seeking neighbor. And he chose you by calling you to your organization in this particular work, in this particular season, because you are supposed to lift your voice in worship by advocacy. Proverbs 31:9. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice. No notes. This one feels super clear. Sometimes lifting your voice in worship to the Lord looks like raising your voice on behalf of the people we serve. I will hold space for you. At Jericho Road, we have a spiritual care team that pushes into exam rooms to pray with patients. They meet with staff as well. Our director of spiritual care is a literal angel on earth with her very well-regulated nervous system and soothing voice. If the Bible is an audiobook, you'd want her to read it to you. She will hold space because when you hold space for a hurting person, Jesus fills up the space that you are holding. How can you hold space at your clinic? We have devotionals with our team. And something that we use this time for is to do what's called Journey to Jericho Road. Team members tell the story of how they got to us, how they came to walk Jericho Road with us. And this is a blessing because it's a reminder over and over again that God is bringing us called, equipped, obedient people that want to worship Him by loving their neighbor. How can you remind one another of the faithfulness of God to your organization, the provision of people, the blessing of community, the gift of one another? If you aren't already, I encourage you to make time and space in your regular work life to spend time in community. You can do that at lunch. You can do it if you get a break. You can do it if you step aside for a minute. You do it by yourself. Worshiping God is thanking Him for bringing the person sitting next to you to your organization. What happens when I don't feel like it? We are called to work heartily, sincerely, enthusiastically, full of commitment. What if we don't feel like it? My best friend Kara and I lived together for a few years after high school, and she sang constantly. She sang when she was happy. She sang when she was mad. She sang when she was sad. The songs changed, the tone changed, but one thing was constant. She was singing, sincerely, enthusiastically, full of commitment. A few years ago, she got a pretty difficult diagnosis, and I went to her house just to hold space for her. And when I walked in, she was doing the dishes. The sink happens to be one of her very favorite places to sing. She's a whistle while you work kind of lady. She wasn't singing. And when I asked her why, she said, I just don't feel like singing today. Life was too heavy to lift her voice. Sometimes life is too heavy to lift your voice. Sometimes we just don't feel like it. I don't want to be sincere. I'm not enthusiastic. I would like to quit, not commit. What then? Two options, community and obedience. Community. Who is going to hold up your arms or lower you through the roof? Moses' friends held up his arms in Exodus. A paralyzed man's friends lower him through the roof to Jesus in Luke. We get by with a little help from our friends. I want you to know how truly unsettling it was for Kara to not be singing. I also need you to know that I am tone deaf, and I do not sing unless I am alone in the car. Catch me during worship tonight, I will be lip syncing. But I did sing then. I didn't know what to do. So I just started singing. And she cried, and I cried, and we sang, and then we laughed. When you don't feel like it, you will need community. We are wired for it. Moses' friends held up his arms when he could no longer hold up the staff as he needed to win the battle in Exodus. The paralyzed man's friends lowered him through the roof to be healed by Jesus when the crowd was too big to get through in Luke. We will need people to stand in the gaps for us like we stand in the gaps for our communities because we won't always feel like it. I have a dear friend in this CCHF community that I meet with monthly. She's a fellow HR person, and HR can be really lonely. We are the secret keepers. We hold the heavy things of team members that we care very deeply for, and because of confidentiality, we can't talk to anybody about what we're carrying. We know things we'd rather not know, and sometimes we have to make decisions we'd rather not make. Shameless plug to check on your HR people. It's hard out here. Every month, we talk about anything and everything. She holds up my arms, and I lower her through the roof. And almost every time I come into our meeting, I'm heavy and tired, and I don't feel like worshiping. And every time I leave our meeting, I am lighter and energized, and I'm thanking God for the gift that she is. When you don't feel like it, you will need people who will feel like it for you until you can feel like it again. Worship is a collective act. Obedience, you won't always feel like it. That's when you'll need to do it the most. When I got married, our pastor talked about the whole in sickness and in health part. And I'm sure he said some really cool things as I joined my husband for life, but I remember exactly one thing that he said. He said he thought that vows should include whether I feel like it or not. I will love you, whether I feel like it or not. I will lift you up, whether I feel like it or not. I will forgive you, whether I feel like it or not. Our jobs are hard, y'all. We are carrying the trauma and the stories and the diagnosis and sometimes the projections and misplaced anger of the people that we are serving. You won't always feel like worshiping God by being kind to your coworker or working enthusiastically or using what little voice you have left to advocate for someone. But this is where obedience kicks in. Sometimes you will have to choose to worship anyway, whether you feel like it or not. I don't say this flippantly. This isn't a suck it up kind of pep talk. This is just where I tell you that the yes may not always be enthusiastic. You might just say, okay, that's okay. Being obedient to showing up at all, even when you don't want to, is an act of worship because you are telling God that he is worthy of you showing up, even when you don't want to. Worship is a response. You are here for her. My entire career is like someone waving in my direction and I'm looking behind me to try to figure out who they are waving to. Spoiler alert, they're waving at me. I have never, not once, felt entirely prepared for the next step that God was asking me to take. I started at Jericho Road as a volunteer. I was mentoring women delivering their first babies in the United States. I was 23 years old. I was in school to be an elementary teacher, and I had zero business being in that delivery room. So imagine my surprise when my mentee needed an emergency C-section. And out of all of the women in the room praying over her from her family, she chose me to come into the OR with her. Zero business being in there. But as I waited for scrubs, I heard God say, you just need to say okay. God didn't need an enthusiastic yes. Okay was enough. I said okay. And I'm here 14 years later, and I am not an elementary school teacher. I was a young life leader. And can I just tell you that when I was asked to be one, I looked over my shoulder to see who they were waving at. I didn't enjoy high school girls when I was a high school girl. Zero business. But I knew how this panned out last time, and so I said, okay. One night, as I dropped off my last girl, she told me some of the hardest things that had happened to her. And as it turned out, they were some of the hardest things that had ever happened to me. And I heard God say, you are here for her. She is why. And she was. Worship is saying okay and taking the first step when you can't see the whole staircase. It's bowing to God, showing reverence, honoring him with your response, with obedience, with an expression of gratitude. You may never know when you say okay, what that was for, but he'll tell you. You are worshiping and glorifying him by loving the people he puts in front of you every day. This is worshiping in the workplace. So how loud are you going to sing? Does anybody have any questions, any comments, anything that resonated with you, anything you feel like you're taking from this session? Yes, what song was she singing when I walked by? Can I ask her? Do you remember what song you were singing? She's in here. My singer, my song. I don't remember. Neither of us remember, but I guess it stuck with us either way. All right. Yeah, Manny. Sorry. I don't know you, sir. Go right ahead. Yeah. I'm going to repeat this just for the recording. So what strategies do we have to keep ourselves in a space where we are spiritual, where we can worship when the work is hard? Am I explaining that right? Okay. I think, so I heard a description once that I think has stuck with me, that whatever is in your coffee cup is what will spill out if somebody bumps into you. So if there is negativity in there, if there's some toxicity in there, if there's lies and anger and frustration and somebody bumps into you, that's what spills over. If that coffee cup is full of Jesus and scripture and worship and positivity and a heart and a posture of service, that's what will spill out when somebody bumps into you. It's inevitable that we're going to bump into each other. So I think the strategy is making sure that your cup is full of the right things and making sure that your leaders' cups are full of the right things. I think that starts with being intentional about how your leaders are poured into. I also think we each have an individual responsibility to be obedient to reading our Bibles and engaging in community and figuring out what worship looks like for us. So I think it's an individual piece, but I also think it's a collective piece of just encouraging each other. I have some accountability partners that will say, when was the last time you read your Bible? Getting a little cranky. And if I'm honest, it's been too long. So I think it's just a matter of checking in if you have that accountability partner or even with yourself to say, hey, I'm living up here. I'm living frustrated. I'm living annoyed. I'm hanging out at a pain level of 9, and it doesn't take much to tip to a 10. So I think just checking in with yourself, checking in with other people, and just organizationally trying to build in small pockets that just grow, I think, making sure that your cup is full of the right things. Take no credit. I heard it once and I was like, oof, I like that. There's a little accountability and what is your cup full of? Because we're going to bump into each other. And I think that was the, one of the things that stuck out to me in that is that we're going to bump into each other. This is not a how do we avoid bumping into each other? We're going to. So how do we handle that? And I know that for me, when my cup isn't full of the right things, I am living annoyed. My millionth email, the millionth project, the millionth thing that hasn't gone well. But how do we recognize that and bring it back down to a place that is manageable and pour the right things into our cup, or find people who pour the right things into our cups? So just navigating kind of different mindsets. Is that differences in faith? Is that differences in just like posture? How would you articulate those differences? Yeah. No preferences. That's a great question. I think kind of going back to that first spot of like how you serve other people, I think it's like a ripple effect. And so I think as much as we can try to demonstrate the things that we hope other people are demonstrating, like that empathy or asking people. I absolutely have had staff interactions where I've said like, can you tell me more about that? And what I think is like a very sweet, sincere, like, no, honestly, tell me more about that. Like, this is a posture I'm trying to function with and serve you well. And they have said like, I don't wanna. And you're like, well, okay. But you just keep trying and showing up and being who you are and trying to find people who are also kind of functioning that way to keep you encouraged. But I think we just keep serving and loving. And I think in my experience, I have not seen a time that doesn't eventually stick. It just, you have to not tap out. And that's the hardest part. The hardest part is not tapping out. Over time, I think it has worked. And I have seen some mindset shifts on whole teams start with one or two people if you just keep at it. I would also say, and I think we talk about this a lot at Jericho Road, like leaders aren't just in title. And I know that's like a very common thing to say is like, you don't need a title of a leader to be a leader, but that is true. Like your posture as a staff member, wherever you find yourself, can really influence how other people function and how they interact with you, and ultimately, hopefully, how they interact with other people. And so I would say, and wherever you sit, don't underestimate your influence, wherever that is. Because even if your influence is just showing up over and over again to kind of demonstrate the mindset that you have and hope that other people will kind of take on, just kind of keep at it. All right, go get some dinner. I'm going to hang out up here for a few minutes. So if anybody wanted to talk it through a little bit more, ask any other questions, contact information, whatever you'd like, I'll hang out up here for a little bit. Thank you so much for coming.
Christian Community Health Fellowship exists to encourage, engage, and equip Christians to live out the gospel through healthcare among the poor and marginalized. If you enjoyed listening to CCHF Talk, make sure you follow, like, and share on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. To learn more about Christian Community Health Fellowship, visit cchf.org and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Join us next time for another episode of CCHF Talk.